Mid-season review of the WNBA. We get into it next on Beyond the Locker Room. The WNBA has hit the mid-season point. The All-Star break is here. We're gonna break down kind of like the highlights, the big stories so far that I'm seeing this season, and then afterwards, and get into some of those things, especially discussing the new team in the T-Dot on the Tempo. I'll lead with that first, the Toronto Tempo, because to me that is a big story here coming from this part of the world. I would say the Tempo has been off to a fantastic start as far as gaining fans and momentum. I think overall they've done a lot of really good things well. I'll even say I was critical of actually the logo, even the nickname, but especially the logo. I thought it looked pretty cheap and tired when I first saw it. Still not a huge fan of it, but the color scheme, I grew into it more and more. I really like that pale blue one. That was nice. I think my dad and I were mentioning that a couple of weeks ago when they played in that jersey. That's a nice looking jersey, I ain't gonna lie. But I plan to get down there. I know some friends have been down there a couple times already. I want to get down there and watch a game before the season's done. But they've been a great story. I mean, the biggest WNBA, I think, crowd perhaps ever at a WNBA game. Almost 22,000 or so in Montreal. They've had big games here. I think the other day they played here in Scotiabank Arena, maybe for the Vegas game. I'm trying to remember, but they also have the Fever coming into town. It's going to be a Scotiabank Arena game. So this is this is great stuff. The momentum they generated, they've kind of found themselves a pocket from a standpoint of where they sit in the Toronto sports culture and sports media. They got off to a really good start, and they were looking to hover around for an eighth spot in the playoffs. 7th or 8th spot. The injuries, unfortunately, I guess it goes to the downside of things have come up this season for Toronto. The injuries have been just nagging them. The rookie Kiki Rice was off to a good start once she got in the starting lineup. Unfortunately, she got hurt a few games after she got in the lineup. That's unfortunate. As she was giving almost like 14 a game, I think, at that point. So it really was hurtful. Then the big one that hurt. They've had some other injuries throughout the season with the front court with Temi. Of course, Sabali, who's been in and out and then got injured recently again. We'll get into that in a second. And also, I would say also too, of course, the big one is Sykes, who was the leading scorer before she got hurt. I had her as an all-star, but that was unfortunate. But actually, to go back, one of the great stories, actually, to jump back a little bit on that front, was Maria Mabry, who I've not been a big fan of. I've never really been impressed with her in late-game decision-making, late-game shot-making. Has a way of kind of freezing up at the free throw line in late-game situations. But boy, I'll give her credit, man. I didn't think she'll fill it up like this. I mean, I thought they overpaid for her a little bit, but my gosh, boy, has she been worth every penny on and off the court. I mean, the 53-point, special she put out there. I think they had a cool little graphic on Instagram where they had all the leading Toronto hoopers for their for the most points they scored. They had DeMar up there like 51 or 52. Siakam had a 51-point game in the Garden, I think. They had Van Vliet's 50-point game in there. So they had all these folks with these 50-point games, and I think Vince, of course, was up there. And then you see Mabry at 53. So good on her, good on the team. They're a fun team to watch. They scrap and fight most nights. They're going to be in the games, and you're getting a good product overall. So that's there's a really good thing. I would say only a minor bump from a PR standpoint. Agree with me, disagree with me. I think in this case it was the right move. I think Sandy Brundello's comments just recently, about a week ago, about Angel Reese, relating to her as a protected species, bad look, not great. And I'll say this: I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, the intent." Actually, I think the problem sometimes people get is the intent's not the point. The intent is the impact. Not the intent. I should say the intent is not the point. The impact is the point. It's not a matter of if it's intent or not. For example, if you taught your boy, in this case, and you make a joke about his girlfriend not being the most attractive person in the world, you might want to make it as a joke, but that might not come off real well with him as a joke. He might see it as something very differently. The intent might have been there, but it didn't come out right. when it's all said and done. And I think what I liked about the whole situation was it just longed for yesteryear where it's like, oh, here's a grown up. She went and she apologized about it. I mean, I'm not one to rank apologies, but from an apology standpoint, she's very forthright and very honest about it, and I thought it was a fine response. She said she's going to speak with with Angel as well as the coach and the Dream about it. And she got the 1 game suspension, and I think that's the way it should be. We just move on at that point. I think that's the way how adults handle things when something doesn't go right. I don't see rationale about it. I mean, I don't know. We're in a world now where it's like if someone does something wrong, the first thing they want to do is get their back up in the corner, and double what they say, double down on it. It's like, you know what? I don't know. I grew up at a time when someone said something out of pocket, and if they knew it and they were like a decent person, they'd say, you know what, my bad. That's what you should be doing. So good on her. But as I said before, overall, I mean, it's been a great season for the Tempo. I look forward for the stretch. Maybe they can make a push to get back in things. Right now, they are the 10th seed at the moment, a game behind or half a game behind the Fire, the other expansion team. And right now, I would say, let me see, where are they now? Essentially 4 games back of the Mystics, who have the 8th spot. That's a lot of work. Hopefully, they get some players back. I think Rice might be coming back soon. Sykes hopefully will be coming back soon. They need help soon. So we'll see. Sabley hopefully after the injury that happened on the Clark play, on the Reese play, I should say. Hopefully, Sabley will be ready to go. So we'll see where things go there. So Tempo, big win, big story. It does open up possibilities for other Canadian teams with the response we saw in Montreal. We know out west in Vancouver as well as parts of Edmonton. They've had great numbers out there. It does give the WNBA to make a mark a little differently than the NBA. They go in some markets that the NBA is not in and really explore those. So who knows? Maybe if Edmonton, obviously, or Vancouver gets a team, I think Vancouver's a more likelier one. But Edmonton they've shown out. So who knows? And of course, right there, Montreal, who's been trying to get. They've been kind of putting in feelers for an NBA team. So maybe you kind of work through the back door and get yourself a WNBA team first to show how you can support sports and support basketball in the city. But that's all great news for the most part, all around for the W in Toronto. All right, so let's get into where things stand right now. Some of the big pictures. I'll discuss some of the stories as I discuss the standings. Right now, let's get into it. Unlike the NBA and most sports, the WNBA it converges East and West. So even though they have an East and West conference, it's the top 8 teams. They get into the playoffs, so you could have a West Coast team play another West Coast team and vice versa for the East. But right now, Minnesota leads on top right now at 22-6 record as of this recording. They've been outstanding. I mean, let's face it. Howard's been great for them in the middle and the front court to help out with Fee's injury. But the biggest story out of Minnesota, the goggles, the spectacle herself, man. As they nickname her. I love that nickname, by the way. That's a well thought out nickname. That's an underrated art and craft nowadays, man. Because folks don't really make up nicknames like they used to. Now everyone just grabs someone's initials and it's like a lazy manner of like nicknames. The spectacle, that's a fantastic nickname. So Olivia Miles, I mean, she's must-see TV. As I said before, if I see the links on TV, I'm just stopping right there and I'm watching. She's fantastic. I mean, the way she can run the court, some of the finishes around the hoop she has, the pull-ups she has, and I think that she is part of the brand. We've seen other ones in this case, like Flage, obviously the same rookie class, who's been fantastic. I think right now we know Miles is probably going to win Rookie of the Year unless something crazy happens. That's a lock and a guarantee. But I want to give a shout out to Flage, who's been fantastic, and right now might be quote unquote runner up. She's had some monstrous games herself. But overall, the point I want to make about the 2 guards there, as well as other guards that have come out in the recent years, like Clark and others, is that there's the guard play right now in the WNBA is moved to the modern era. And what I mean by that is guards in the past, how the WNBA, they were just facilitators. All their purpose was to be a decent point of attack guard on defense and just facilitate and make sure you just have the ability to feed the post. Just feed the post, and every once in a while maybe you run a fast break, but feed the post to your big. because the big is the salvation of the WNBA. It's very much following the same pathway. If you're an NBA historian or a hoops historian, this is the pathway you saw for many decades in the NBA, where everything revolved around the big. Everything was a satellite around the big. Your guards, your wings, the coaching would feed towards the big. The WNBA is very much in that phase, but is slowly moving out of that phase. The next big part of the phase would be is, can you win with a guard or a wing dominant team to win a championship? That would be the next phase of this. For the most part, bigs have won the championships. Asia Wilson, Candace Parker, Lisa Leslie. I mean, ironically, the first team that was the first dynasty, I would say the two dynastic teams, well, two of the three, I would say, are the dynastic teams. You think of the Vegas Aces, you think of the Minnesota Lynx from a decade ago with Maya Moore, and you think of course, the initial dynasty of the Houston Comets. I may be missing something from my WNBA history, but that's who I think of the dynastic teams for the most part. Houston winning 4. I think the first 4. What you notice with those teams, with at least for the other two, not in Vegas, let's face it, Houston was a guard dominant, wing dominant team with Swoops and Cooper. Obviously they had Thompson, but Thompson was the third banana on that team. Those two were definitely 1A, 1B. Then you go and look at Minnesota, obviously that team, but Maya Moore being that as a big wing, that was kind of like the centerpiece of that team. But more times than not, I think Delle Donne won with Washington. Like, it's rare to see guards be the dominant force or wings be the dominant force. And we'll see as we move into this next era of the WNBA with all these guards coming out and how they handle the ball, how they move, how they read the game, very much similar to how the guys are in the NBA. You're starting to see that with the type of shot selection they're having. Miles, Clark, Flage just mentioned. There's plenty more, in some ways, Kelsey Mitchell, same thing, she's a little earlier than them. But that transition has been happening for a minute, and you got more coming out here, of course, with the big woman coming pretty soon. When her time comes out from USC, we shall see. Boy, I can't wait when that happens. I just hope in this case the tempo are in position. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I think that's a fascinating part with Miles. Moving on here, Golden State at 19-8. They're the kind of sneaky underrated story. This team is so good right now. It's unbelievable. They are going to be a tough out for anybody. And right now, they would match up against the Liberty, which if I'm the Liberty, I'm finding ways to get out of that matchup. Golden State is so rugged, so stingy on defense. They are tough to put away. They have a way of, they play amazing in close games. They put 3 defeats on the Dream, and all those were close games. And it was just a few possessions late in the game and getting those stops, and that's what Golden State can do. They have key all-stars like Gabby Williams, and of course Veronica Burton. She didn't make it this year, but she's an all-star in my mind. And of course Thornton, who did make it last year for the Valkyries, and she just came back from injury a few weeks ago. So they are 9-1 the last 10. They are a beast to deal with. Golden State. Coming next, the champs, Aces. You know what? You know them. They're gonna flip the switch. They're 18-8 right now. 6-4 in the last 10. They haven't been great the last week or so. They got housed at home by the Fever on national TV on a Sunday night. The Aces are a team that I think they'll flip the switch. I'm not too concerned about them. I still think they need a little more punch off the bench, but I like where they're positioned. I wouldn't say a surprise, but to think they're doing this well, this fast, the Dallas Wings, man. I know that this piece, my man, my man Barlow in this case here, he was all over. James was all over the pick of AZ Fudd. She's been pretty good, man. She'll be the 3-point competition, the All-Star game. She's knocking it down like crazy from out there. She's really starting to get a feel for it. And I think that's the reason why you might start hearing some Enrique trades, because I think they see the end nigh for that setup. But overall, the Wings, man, Becker's up in the MVP discussion for sure, right up there with, I think, Olivia Miles and, of course, the great Asia Wilson. But, Paige Becker's unreal. I forgot to add her to the list of, like, the new type of style guard. She arguably may be the best of the bunch in this case. So, my apologies, Paige. My apologies, man. She's a beast. Dallas at 18-9, 7-3 in the last 10. Up next, 5, the Fever. Now, the Fever have been kind of, a weird up and down season for Indiana. Their lows are very low. Their highs are amazingly high. They're still trying to figure some things out, but 17-10, you gotta think, considering where things were at the beginning of the season, that's a pretty strong effort at the All-Star break. They won 7 of the last 10. They've had a 3-game winning streak. They're really starting to figure things out. Um, Clark has been in and out of the lineups, and it's been fascinating to see how they play with her versus without her. As I said before, I am working on a Fever. I'm going to put together a Fever podcast coming up in the coming weeks. I think that is a discussion to be had on a multitude of levels on that front. But I think Indiana right now with them, it's all about, can they get the mindset to play defense when they need to? Because they can score. I mean, their scoring is ridiculous. No one can outscore Indiana. The question is, do they have enough wherewithal to actually, put up a good fight to actually get stops late in games? And that's the question. The other part, I think, is the other major question, which is going to be part of my discussion. I don't want to preempt myself on this one, but the Stephanie White, Caitlin Clark dynamic, I think, is fascinating if you're into like coaching strategies and approaches with their players. I think this one's fascinating. It's always interesting to see how a player views themselves versus how the coach views them, and the strengths and weaknesses of that player. And I think that is what's playing out here. I think what's helped them a little bit, not saying that she won't be necessary to help them get over the top for a championship. That remains to be seen. But her being out for a bit and then her coming back on minutes restriction, I think in some ways the minutes restriction is important. How the style of play she's played with the minutes restriction, in some ways, I think has been helpful for Indiana. I'll just leave it there. Up next on the 6th spot right now at 16-10 right now is Atlanta Dream. They've been a strange team where they start off like a rocket when coming out the gates. I think, they are very similar to some extent to a few other teams on here. To the next team I'm going to get to is New York. Atlanta right now, they've had some issues where they had some brain farts on defense where they put up some atrocious defensive responses. And a team that has that many good defensive players, that shouldn't happen. But overall, at 16-10, it's a decent spot for them. They were 4 of the last 6, but they have won the last 3, and they're getting it together a little bit. But they squeezed out a win against Chicago, which quite honestly, with or without Reese, they should have won that game pretty easily. They're up 20 at one point. Reese goes out, all hell breaks loose. So I'm not sure she's the best player in the team, but she definitely seems to be their most valuable one. She's had a fantastic season overall. Alicia Gray has been hot and cold in my mind. I think she's the key, honestly. She and Howard, they have to believe that they are actually the best offensive players on the floor. And I think sometimes they kind of, like, when I watch them, I don't want to say shirk is the right word, but they kind of get tight. Let's put it that way when they get against big matchups, where they have to kind of, when you want that punch, that offense, they kind of shrink a little bit in those moments. And if Reese's mindset can kind of permeate over them, who she ain't backing down for anybody, that hopefully will help them, because sometimes some players are just not that type of player and you need to kind of drag it out of them. What will help too, and I think this has also been part of their problem recently, Bree Jones is now coming back into the flow. We'll see how they actually deal with that, and that's going to be interesting how they manage minutes, manage the rotation with her coming back. She's an all-star too, an all-star caliber player. So that's going to be interesting, but they should be pretty strong in the second half of the season. 7, New York Liberty. This too is a very similar situation where they've had a very up and down season. They're 15-12 right now. They too are 4-6 in the last 10, but won the last 2. However, I think they've had some issues trying to incorporate Sabrina Ionescu back into the lineup, and she's trying to figure out where she fits in with this lineup offensively. The beginning of the season, they seem to remember they have this big behemoth in the middle called Jonquel Jones. They're running a lot through her. Now with Sabrina back, now we got this this little subtle tug of war. I think it's hurt them a little bit. And quite honestly, I think also too it's hurt their defense a little bit. Not Ionescu's a horrible defender, but I think the team they have is a better defensive unit prior to Sabrina coming back. She will give you more offensively, but she'll give a little too defensively. So I think that's also playing into some of this with the Liberty. Stewie, I think at this point when it comes to her perimeter shooting, which we thought was a blip last year, I think she as a offensive shooter, a 3-point shooter, you have to kind of like fully respect. I think you can start cheating on her a little bit, man. Until she starts hitting that with more frequency, I think you're going to see more and more of that. Her post-up stuff, her stuff in the mid-range, sublime. Yeah, sublime, man. She hit some shots against Indiana the other night, man. It's like, oh my gosh. The little turnaround, pump from about 6 feet. Tough shot in the post. Tough stuff. But Stewie is nice, man. Stewie's nice. And finally, the young Washington Mystics at 14-12 got off to a bit of a rough start, but boy, watch them, man. They're 6-4 in their last 10, won the last 2. They got some young, some young demons coming out there, boy. I say that in the most respectful way, man. Citron, Kiki, they ain't playing, man. Like it's a fun team, Washington. They're gonna be a fun team if they can make it to the playoffs. Except for Portland, Toronto behind them. I would say, just on a side note, before we wrap up here, the disappointments for this season. You gotta say 3 teams I'm looking at right here: Sparks, Mercury, Sky. The Sparks, they pay a lot of big money to get these big stars and big names, and got Anika, who's having a fantastic season as always. Plum, who's been outstanding. She's an offensive juggernaut, and yet and Cameron, finally playing a certain amount of games and getting the flow. I don't know, quite honestly. You gotta look at her a little bit with a side eye. I don't think she's popped the way we thought she would pop. I'm not saying she's going to be like the level of Reese or Clark from that draft class, but you thought you'd see more from her, and it's been unfortunate. Hopefully she can grow more as the season goes on for the Sparks. Phoenix, I don't know what the heck's going on down there, man. They're losing their mind down there at Phoenix. Very disappointing season. My girl Copper was in a piece of funk at the beginning of the season, kind of turned around a little bit. Alyssa Thomas doing Alyssa Thomas things in a lot of different ways. That's a frustrating team right now to watch. Chicago, they paid a whole heap of money, brought in all these vets, Diggins and others, to come there, and it's been, the vets right now are so frustrated. Cloud and Diggins are so frustrated right now with what's going on in Chicago. I guess Angel wasn't so wrong after all, maybe. But Chicago really needs to get it together. 9-18, my gosh. 4-6 in their last 10, which is actually pretty decent for them. They were on like a 6-game losing streak before that, so 6 or 7-game losing streak. So Chicago needs to get it together. I think some people need to get swept out if they continue like this year. Coach, management, whatever, gone. Connecticut's not worth talking about. They're moving to Houston, so they're stripping down the parts, as they say. And Seattle's pretty much going with the young guns. And they have some nice young guns to start with. Seattle's going to be nice in a year or so watch them. So, hey, man, lots of stories to dub. Lots of things going on, as always, on and off the court. But overall, what I noticed the most is that the quality and level of skill is jumped exponentially. I think it's the reason why the scoring is through the roof. With a lot of these games where you're seeing games in the 90s and even 100 points in 40 minutes. So a lot of that has happened. I mean, a lot of people have gotten on the refs on a lot. The refs are always something to complain about. But if I had to grade it on a curve compared to how it's been the last couple of years, I think the refereeing has gotten better. I know it's strange to say so, but I think they've made strides. Is it where it needs to be yet? No. Will it ever be where it needs to be for any refereeing committee? Absolutely not. You guys all know, you guys quarrel about referees in every sport. So that's never going to be the case. But the competency of it, is it improving? Yes, it is. So give it some time, folks. We're all in the growing pains. There are these moments as well, too, in other leagues. And the NBA is the natural comp. It'll take some time, but the league's growing in the right direction. Looking forward to the All-Star game and all the events around it. Once again, you know where to find me. My apologies. I'm so choked up about it. You know where to find me, as always, on Facebook, Instagram, X, and, of course, Blue Sky. And as always, you can find me right here on YouTube. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Subscribing's for free, so you don't have to worry about anything coming out of your pocket. As always, guys, be safe out there. Keep it locked. We'll talk next time. Peace.